Hello friends, a big warm welcome to our very own channel, Ammu&You, where I am so happy to narrate stories to you. Stories that I've been reading, we all have been reading, probably. Some may have been forgotten, but while narrating the stories, I go back to them, and that is such an amazing experience. I'm sure you also would enjoy remembering those stories being narrated again. Today, I have a very interesting story written by the amazing author, Shivani, who has always written about female protagonists. And her female protagonists have been very strong women in their own way. So this is the story written by Shivani, Muggi. My reverie was broken when the doctor entered and asked, "Shall I send the next one in?" I nodded, unable to speak to a normal person so soon after an exposure to someone's abnormal life. I had been told the next person was the clown of the jail, and my heart lifted a little at the prospect of meeting this one. It was like yearning for a spoon of sugar after swallowing a bitter dose of castor oil. So far, the ones I had met were like the practiced trapeze artists of a circus. They really flirted with death as they swung dangerously from high-tension ropes, using their life to another person's machinations. The clown was led in, a blank, foolish face, large, expressionless eyes, and a meaningless grin on her face. "Here she is," the doctor smiled as she brought her to where I sat. "She goes home tomorrow. Listen, Muggi, I just got a letter from your husband. He is looking forward to your return, but is terrified of one thing." "What is that, Mem Saab?" She looked disturbed for a moment. Naturally, he would be worried, I privately thought. Who would not be, faced with prospect of welcoming a wife who had been locked away for 14 years? The doctor smiled. "He says," she twinkled at Muggi, "that he's worried you won't leave a single brick standing in his house." No, Sarkar." Muggi's grin was back immediately on her foolish face, and she touched her earlobes in horror. "I won't eat them." I must have looked stunned at this exchange, so the doctor turned to me as she explained, "This is a true child of the earth, Shivani ji," she said. "She has a thing about mud. Give her a sakora or a kulhar, a flower pot, anything made of mud, and she eats it all up." Muggi blushed and looked down at her toes. No wonder she looked like a flower pot herself, I thought. A dark, swarthy face, a sari tied inches above her ankles, and a kurti she seemed to be bursting out of. If she sneezed, the buttons would fly, I thought. She had no trace of womanly softness in her at all. Her eyes, her walk, her face were singularly lacking in any grace. She sat in front of me, swinging her knees in a way that no decent woman would. And yet, she was capable of loving a man deeply. She blushed at his mention, and her face registered the glow of a woman in love each time his name cropped up. What a strange tale hers was. She was just 15 years old when her sister's husband introduced her to a life that landed her here. At 15, Muggi exuded an animal sexuality that was unmistakably, and her swarthy skin fairly glowed with her youthful energy. She was initiated into the craft of charming, gullible men, and soon she became adept at that trade. Her body filled out, and her fleshy lips and large eyes acquired the sly animal cunning of a vixen. Her brother-in-law would find some grieving widower, eager to find a second wife to look after him and his children, and offer Muggi as a candidate. A quick wedding was organized, and the two sisters would put up the drama of weeping and wailing when it was time for Muggi to leave for a new home. The poor groom was taken in completely as he tenderly led his new bride away. Muggi would then work on his family, quickly ingratiating herself with the mother-in-law, and soon she knew where the family stashed its wealth. Then one day, when the time was ripe, she decamped with everything, and neither she nor her brother-in-law could ever be traced. They would flee to another town and start their business under a new name, a new address. In 20 years, Muggi had conned 14 husbands. And then Muggi fell in love with her 15th husband, who was a blacksmith. She loved his glistening body to distraction. Often, she toyed with the idea of confessing everything to him. She would tell him, she thought, how she was innocently seduced by her own brother-in-law and sister into this life, and now she wanted to reform herself. But suppose she thought immediately that he turned away from her in disgust, and so she would keep silent. Most men cannot tolerate even one other man in their wife's life. Here she was with a caste of 14 husbands behind her. Even Draupadi in the Mahabharata could not equal her record, it seems. And then there was another problem. Her husband's mother was a Devi. She loved Muggi like a daughter, and Muggi, motherless herself, was overwhelmed by the love she found in this house. Muggi gave back to her husband's mother all the love she got from her. She worked tirelessly in the kitchen, oiled the old woman's hair religiously, and combed it lovingly, rubbed her feet to ease her corns, and even picked the lice from the old woman's hair. Muggi's penchant for eating mud was a joke between them, and whenever she saw Muggi looking pensive, the old woman would break a terracotta sakura in two and give it to her daughter-in-law, saying kindly, "Here, Bahu, go on and eat it." And she would tell the neighbors, "Look at her. Any other Bahu would crave sweets and savories. All this one wants is a bit of earth. How innocent is my Bahu." This earthen idol was soon to be shattered. Her brother-in-law and sister began to get restive. It had never taken their student so long to accomplish her mission. What if the golden goose had been kidnapped by another player? And so her brother-in-law decided to go and check out matters for himself. He arrived at Muggi's house to ask after her welfare and to complain that even after 6 months, she had not visited her sister once. But the blacksmith was no fool, and he was found out. Then started a sensational case that went on, and fresh skeletons tumbled out of Muggi's past. Both she and her brother-in-law were convicted on charges of cheating and sent to jail. Muggi was given a lighter sentence, and the day I met her, said Shivani, was her last in the jail. She looked thrilled at the prospect of returning to her blacksmith and his mother. But will they accept her as willingly? I asked the doctor. After all, they must know all about her past. Her mother-in-law can't wait to welcome her daughter-in-law. The doctor told me. Isn't that true, Muggi? She asked her. The doctor turned to Muggi. Perhaps her simple, uncomplicated nature had something in it after all. For Muggi blushed and looked down bashfully. Why don't you say something? The doctor goaded her. But Muggi's face ducked even deeper into her chest. Do you know? The doctor turned to me again. Her mother-in-law visited her regularly in jail and never once forgot to bring her diyas and sakoras to eat. Muggi stuffed her pallu into her mouth as she giggled. I promise I won't eat another one all my life, she said. The happiness on her face, suffused with the joy of returning to her husband and home, was infectious. And both the doctor and I burst out laughing. As I got up to leave the cursed prison, I wanted to whisper in Muggi's ears, go ahead and eat all the mud you want, Muggi. Any woman who can retain her sense of humor and her innocence after a prison sentence deserves all the happiness she gets. I silently blessed her as I left. May your mother-in-law keep feeding you bits of terracotta. May your blacksmith love you with all his heart. And may you find the happiness in your 15th marriage that was lacking in all the previous 14, Muggi. Amen. What a beautiful story of love, innocence, circumstances, and human behavior. I'm sure you would have loved the story. If you have, please like, share, subscribe. Press the bell icon so that you are updated with the channel. Thank you so much for listening to the story. And thank you so much for all the lovely comments that I get for you. Just let them keep coming. They are really, really so very encouraging to me. Stay blessed, stay happy, and wait for me again with another story to narrate to you. Bye-bye.